Welcome back to Ben's Book Club. Today we are diving into the book Misbelief by behavioral economist Dan Ariely. And it is a fascinating and, a deeply compassionate look into a question that I think is on pretty much everyone's mind these days. Why do smart, rational people fall into these deep rabbit holes of misinformation? And let me tell you, the answers are probably not what you'd expect.
Right from the get-go, Ariely comes at this from a place of empathy. His core idea is that misbelief isn't some kind of personal failing, it's not a lack of intelligence, it's a deeply fundamentally human thing. The very same mental tools that help us survive and thrive every day can also, under just the right conditions, lead us way off track.
And that's really the central question he's asking. See, he argues that none of us are immune to this. So as we walk through his ideas, the real question isn't about them, it's about us. What would it take for you or for me to start believing something that just isn't true?
So to answer that, Ariely gives us this really powerful metaphor, the funnel of misbelief. The idea here is that nobody just wakes up one morning and decides to believe a wild conspiracy theory. It doesn't work like that. Instead, it's a gradual journey, a kind of psychological process that slowly pulls people in, one step at a time.
Okay, so let's be super clear on what we're talking about here. Misbelief isn't just a simple mistake or getting a fact wrong. It's a whole worldview. And the most crucial part of this definition is that it's fueled by our psychological needs. This isn't about being bad at logic. It's about our minds finding a solution to things like anxiety, or feeling powerless, or even just a lack of community.
So Ariely breaks this funnel down into four main forces that all work together. You can kind of think of them as layers in the funnel. It all starts with emotion. Then it gets deepened by the weird ways our brains work, accelerated by our own unique personalities, and then finally, it gets cemented in place by our social lives.
The gateway into this whole funnel, it isn't ignorance, it's stress. Think about periods of intense, widespread uncertainty, like a global pandemic or a major economic crisis. That creates a powerful emotional vulnerability in all of us. We feel out of control, and our brains just desperately start craving simple explanations to make some sense of all the chaos.
And this gets to a really key insight. Feeling uncertain is psychologically painful. So a story, a narrative that points to a villain, it actually offers this strange kind of comfort. It makes it feel like things aren't just random and chaotic. It gives you a sense that there's a plot, and if you can just understand that plot, maybe you can protect yourself.
All right, so once that emotional hook is set, that's when our own minds can start to, kind of work against us. The very same cognitive shortcuts that help us navigate our daily lives can actually speed up our journey down this funnel.
Get this. These biases aren't bugs in our system, they're features. They're how the human brain works. But under stress, they can backfire. Confirmation bias makes us cherry-pick info that fits what we're starting to believe. Proportionality bias makes us think a huge event must have a huge secret cause. Our brains start seeing patterns and connecting dots that aren't really there, and before you know it, you're locked into a false reality that feels completely logical.
And it's not just these general biases. Our own individual personality traits can play a role too. Now, Ariely is super careful to point out this is not about having a bad personality. It's about how certain tendencies we all have can interact with these other forces. So, for example, if you have a natural distrust of authority, or you just really need a tidy explanation for everything, you might slide down that funnel a little faster when you're already feeling stressed out.
And this brings us to the final and, maybe the most powerful force in the entire funnel, the social trap. This is what can make it so incredibly difficult for someone to find their way back out.
This is why misbelief becomes so sticky. Once you find a community of people who all believe the same things you do, it's not really about the facts anymore. It's about your identity. These groups give you a sense of purpose, a feeling of being in the know, and maybe most importantly, a powerful sense of belonging.
And this leads to something Ariely calls the ostracism paradox. See, when we try to argue with someone or shame them for what they believe, we think we're helping, right? But what actually happens is often the exact opposite. It just reinforces their feeling of being a persecuted martyr for the truth. And it pushes them even deeper into the one place they feel totally accepted, their misbelief community. So, if shaming and arguing are completely the wrong move, what actually works? This is where Ariely's work gets really practical. He shifts from just explaining the problem to actually proposing a solution. And it's all centered on this empathy-first approach. The big idea here is that you can't just fact-bomb someone out of a belief they didn't get to through facts in the first place. It just makes them defensive. What works better are techniques like motivational interviewing. This is all about asking open-ended questions instead of giving answers. It's about listening to their underlying fears and really just helping them find their own way out, all while letting them keep their dignity.
Ultimately, the argument is just so powerful. If misbelief starts with the emotional pain of being disconnected, then the antidote has to be connection. It's about rebuilding trust and offering a path back that doesn't require someone to completely sacrifice who they are. And that really leaves us with a final and pretty urgent question. The forces Ariely is describing, they're only getting stronger. I mean, with generative AI creating convincing fakes and our world feeling more uncertain than ever, understanding this funnel isn't just some academic exercise. It's a critical skill for navigating the future. So how do we build that resilience in ourselves and in our communities? Subscribe so you don't miss an episode.